Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and Ramadan Mubarak. My name is Amar Ansari, and I am the Research and Advocacy Coordinator here at CAIR National Headquarters. Joining me today is Nigel Edwards from Raleigh, North Carolina. Today, we'll be talking about a case happening in Shaw University, and we will be talking about how the Council of American Islamic Relations is demanding that Shaw University reopens the King Khalid Mosque that has been closed since 2022. Nigel, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Wa alaikum salam.
So, first question: could you give us a brief overview of the history of King Khalid Masjid, and could you talk about when it closed, why it closed, and what has been the response from the community since?
Correct. So about 40 years ago in the early 1980s, there was a growing Muslim community in Raleigh, North Carolina, and you also had a growing number of students at Shaw University from both North Carolina and also international students. And there in the middle was a Muslim professor, Professor Urabi Mustafa, and he was heading the Islamic Studies department that used to exist at that time at Shaw University, one of the oldest historically Black colleges in the country. And he was able to get funding from the Saudi family to get a building established and constructed called the International and Islamic Studies Center. This building to this day exists. It has classrooms, it has a masjid inside of it, wudu areas, the whole works. And it stayed. It was a great project. It was a wonderful example of interfaith harmony and collaboration. Time went on, and the university saw more financial issues. There's a decreased enrollment from international students as well. And in the early 2000s, they wanted to close the masjid for good. The official reason that they gave was because of the need for offices. That's why they said, at least to the Chicago Tribune. But we protested at that time. I myself personally, but people in the community did. And the masjid was allowed to stay. Fast forward to March of 2020, and COVID hit, and all parties agreed to suspend in-person religious activities to limit the spread of COVID-19. And it made sense in 2020. 2021, we were ready to come back. The university was not ready, and we understood everyone goes at their own pace. And then 2022 came, we saw that the chapel on campus was having religious services open to the public, but the masjid was not. And that is when our protest became more adamant against the university at that point.
So, as I know, there has been recent updates to this case. I believe that there was a vote that occurred in the city council last night. Could you talk more about that vote, the significance of it, and what it means for the masjid and the community as a whole?
Correct. So there was a meeting, a very important meeting that occurred 2 days ago with the Raleigh City Council. And in short, what you have is two different things going on. On one hand, you have the closure of the masjid, which of course is important to us. And we started protesting. We made it clear to the administration the double standard of the chapel being open. And we began publicly protesting outside of the masjid in January 13th of this year. And so for a while, it was an issue of discrimination we felt, right? And the background was Shaw University being very strategically located in downtown Raleigh. They're trying to leverage their real estate by leasing out their land to developers. In the process of doing so, many of their existing buildings are going to be demolished. So that being said, the building that the masjid is located within, the International Studies Center, as it's known as now, that's on the chopping block. And so the idea is that by allowing the university to rezone this property, if the city were to do that, that would pretty much seal the fate of the masjid as we know it. And so for that reason, our whole angle 2 days ago was to oppose the rezoning application that the city was considering for no other reason than the university has not done its due diligence and engaged with the community, which is one of the requirements. So that was our argument. That made the direct connection to the city council's decision, whereas typically speaking, they would not care. Not that they wouldn't care, but they couldn't do anything about it legally if it was just an issue with the private university and us. But because of that lack of engagement with us and other groups, the city council decided to postpone their decision to vote on this application to rezone.
And given where we are now, do you have any expectations of how negotiations with Shaw University is going to go with reopening the masjid?
So I am cautiously optimistic. The interesting thing is, even though we had been protesting for a while now, we had sent many communications to the administration. None of the responses that we received were ever satisfactory as to why we were first temporarily closed because of COVID and then permanently closed as of March 14th of this year when they said officially the university will no longer host a public mosque. Because of the lack of responses that we received, transparency, we were very surprised when this past Sunday, just 2 days before the public hearing, we received indication that they wanted to speak with us. And they wanted to meet the very next day, Monday, the day before the hearing. Now, due to the fact that myself and most people who have jobs, other obligations, we just can't drop what we're doing and meet with people when it's convenient for them. We at the board of the mosque were not able to meet with the university. There were other people in the community at large who were able to, specifically from the Muslim American Public Affairs Committee, a local organization that does a lot of good activism work and engagement with local officials. So there's been some communication, and the attorneys for the university have reached out to us after the hearing. So there's communication, and that did not exist before. So based on that alone, I am cautiously optimistic. But May 2nd is not that far away. That's when this issue comes back up to vote with the city council. And so we're hoping that this time, this limited time, is very productive to get all of our issues resolved.
And I do want to expand on that. So could you also talk about the next steps that you're going to take, as well as what the community can do in regards to Shaw University and the masjid?
Yeah, so our goal from the very beginning was getting the masjid reopened, right? That's the first thing. And in reality, that is not a lot that we're asking. The university has been working with us and having the masjid operating, since the early 1980s. We've had access to the building. It's still there, the masjid. The lights are still on, the water's still running. There really is no issue or reason, in my opinion, why we can't be back today. But nevertheless, we'll work out the logistics in terms of getting us back into facilities. That's the first and foremost temporary solution to our grievances. The more difficult thing to work out, though, however, is making sure that legally speaking, that the masjid has a place in the university's future, especially in the light of rezoning. I've made it clear to the city council and to the administration of Shaw University that we are not against rezoning. We are not against redevelopment. The university has expressed its need to redevelop in an effort to survive financially. And at the end of the day, we have no problem being a part of it as long as we're included. But that's the issue, making sure that we are included. And that's going to involve more extensive negotiations with the university, discussions with our attorney Sami Naji, and then also involvement with our community, engaging with our own Muslim community as to what they want to see the masjid look like in the future.
And what do you think the viewers and the supporters of CAIR can do to help you with this case?
Yeah, by all means, the most important thing is to stay involved in the process. We're still not back in the masjid yet. So we are happy with the negotiations that the university has discussed. Those haven't happened yet. But at the end of the day, we're simply not there in terms of the solutions to our problems. We were planning on filing a lawsuit. I mentioned this 2 days ago against the university, but as a show of goodwill, we temporarily decided not to file it, but it's not off the table. And so we still want involvement from the Muslim community nationally, internationally even, to make sure the university understands the urgency of our plea, and that just because we postponed this decision until May 2nd, that doesn't mean we have a solution. And we want to make that perfectly clear.
And it's now right now it's more important than ever, specifically since it's Ramadan, and it's especially a time in which a lot of Muslims really need a space in which they can reflect and grow spiritually. So everything you said, absolutely correct. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us here today. Inshallah, we'll be seeing some progress very soon, and more power to you. Thank you.
Jazakallahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.